Hi, everybody. We'll get started on our next session, which I'm really excited about. We have a whole group of students here, all of them leaders in open access, and they will tell us about open access from their perspective. I should just say before we get started, although I'm sure you've all heard this, people at the podium will be videotaped. If you ask questions afterwards, your questions will be recorded. So I'm pleased to introduce our 5 student speakers today. Goldis Chami, Rowan Cockett there, Colum Connolly, Umang, and Jae-Young Kwon. And I'll just very briefly tell you, Goldis is an internal medicine resident, and she sits on the steering committee of the Right to Research Coalition. Rowan is a PhD student who designs open access web-based tools for geoscience education, and he also, earlier this year, won the 2013 Innovative Dissemination of Research Award that the library hands out every year. Colum is the Vice President, Academic and External of the Graduate Student Society here at UBC Vancouver and is currently completing a PhD in medical genetics. Umang is Associate Vice President, Academic at the AMS and has stepped in at a very late moment. Thank you very much. And Jae-Young is a registered nurse and author and graduate student in the School of Nursing here. He's also the Editor-in-Chief of the UBC Nursing Student Journal. So we are just going to go ahead and start with Goldus. And I should just say, so this is Pechakucha style. So everybody has 20 slides. Each slide displays for 20 seconds.
Thank you.
Do you want to get it going? I don't want to cut into your time.
No, oh dear. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to try and stick to my 20 seconds per slide. So in my involvement with open access advocacy, both at UBC and nationally, I've really sort of what I've come to is that open access really matters to students, and it matters, and therefore they are motivated to get involved with open access initiatives both at their own universities as well as nationally and internationally. Oh dear.
You're speeding yourself up.
I shouldn't be. And so whether you're an undergraduate student doing research for a term paper, a graduate student both engaging, using the literature for your research as well as contributing to it, or a faculty member who is also contributing, open access matters to you. And I mean, the argument that really resonates with students in particular is, this idea that, taxpayers fund major grant funding agencies like the CIHR and SSHRC. They provide grants to researchers who spend years and years doing innovative research, analyzing it, as well as and then disseminating it. And then once it is disseminated in these journals, often your access is blocked, and the public and taxpayers then have to pay again to access that information. Here at UBC, there's been a great deal of interest amongst students and open access, and there's been a great deal of student advocacy, some of which I've been involved in, that's led to a number of major student organizations on campus, including the Graduate Student Society, the Alma Mater Society, as well as some undergraduate student societies, pledging their support for a campus-wide open access policy. And this has led to an open access statement being developed, as well as it being approved by the Senate Library Committee. And discussions in Senate around that are still pending, but we're slowly moving towards that. And student advocacy has been a part of that. I wanted to share a few student open access initiatives and some examples of advocacy, just to give you a sense of what's going on nationally and internationally. Within the National Graduate Student Caucus, which is a subset of the Canadian Federation of Students, they are pushing for, they're developing a strategy to advance knowledge and use of Creative Commons licensing and open access publishing around students. Creative Commons licensing allows the creator to retain copyright while disseminating that information and allowing others to copy and remix that information if it's being done non-commercially. At Carleton University, they've developed a graduate student open access fund. There are 5 awards of $1,000 each, and they're there to encourage graduate students to start engaging, start publishing in open access journals. Similarly, at the University of Toronto, there's an open access author pilot fund, which is accessible to graduate students and other students as well. And so that's been a great initiative there. At UBC, we've got the Graduate Student Society Open Access Award, which was established by a former GSS senator. You've got 4 awards of $500 each that are awarded to graduate students who deposit their non-thesis work into the university's institutional repository, which is called Circle. Everywhere else, as you will see from the other speakers, we've got student-driven open access journals at Waterloo, the Canadian Graduate Journal of Sociology and Criminology, the Canadian Journal for New Scholars in Education, whose board is sort of Canada-wide, as well as open access week events across the country that students are an instrumental part of. What makes open access advocacy realistic for students is the fact that, we've got tangible solutions and documented examples of student advocacy making a difference. Open access has also been widely adopted at many universities, both in Canada and the States and in Europe and other places. I'm involved with the Right to Research Coalition, which is a coalition of students advocating for OA publishing. We work to mobilize student societies in particular and encourage open access publishing amongst graduate students as well. The organization's statement it's a student statement on the right to research, and it has signatories from around the world who represent over 5 million students. And just a quote from Alex Evans, who's the president of one of these student associations: "Open access will remove barriers for all graduate professional students in our roles as educators, researchers, and scholars. Widespread dissemination and access to research will aid graduate student professionals to advance science and improve the lives and general welfare of the United States, of people in the United States and around the world." Another interesting, another very cool open access related initiative is this Berlin 11 conference that's being partly put on by the Right to Research Coalition, and it's getting together 85 students from around the world for a one-day panel of sessions where they're discussing various things with leading figures in the movement, and so a lot will come out of that, hopefully. What students can do, they can certainly create awareness about open access amongst faculty members. They can convince their fellow peers to publish open access as well as their research supervisors, and then get involved in advocacy at another level. With respect to engaging in advocacy, the Right to Research Coalition has developed a student guide to advocacy, which it was in the hopes of helping students get started in advocacy around their campuses. So it includes an Open Access 101 describing the issues and some of the common misconceptions about open access. It also includes some physical tools, handouts, sample presentations for students interested in the area, as well as where to go if you want to learn more, and some more physical resources. And this is available on the Right to Research Coalition website or through me. So just wanted to give you a flavor of what's being done by students and some of the work that I've encountered, and I will pass it on to the next person. Thank you.
All right, so again, this is supposed to be like 20 seconds a slide, and it makes me nervous, so I'll try my best. So I'm going to talk to you about some open access tools I've been developing for geoscience education. I'm a graduate student here at UBC, and I've been developing tools for geology and teaching geology, and I realize none of you are geologists probably, so I have to start by talking about what geology is. And so in geology, we teach about processes and how those processes combine in a way that creates the landscape that we see today. And so we need to allow these, not only teach about the processes, but also how these processes combine, and teaching students about what ifs. And if you see a complicated environment, we need to distill that and make a story about how that gets produced by the processes that we teach about. And so we take a step back from the complicated life geology, and we use simple models that demonstrate ideas such as cross-cutting relationships and how these interact with topography. The thing that about these is that they're static images, and we want to talk about how the processes combine, and so static images or animations don't give a good way to do that. And so what I saw in my education was a need for interactive tools that allows students to go in and create those what-ifs, those possibilities of how you combine different geologic events, different topographies, to create something new. And so what I saw in my education was that I needed to go from the map to a three-dimensional picture, essentially, but also to be able to change that map and change that picture and create a new topography, create something that looks different. And so the tools that I built in my undergraduate education were used in the introductory geoscience class. It was successful there, and the students liked it, the professors liked it, and I put it on a website and I say, hey world, look at this, it's cool, and it kind of fizzled and died. And so the solution to that was the next year of my life, and changing from a desktop programming language to a web-based programming language. And so all you have to do is navigate to your browser and go to the website, and you can start modeling geology. And this is very powerful because the web is so open, and that there are ways that you can recombine the knowledge, and the possibilities there are pretty cool. And so it's plug-in free, and it's a way that people can start modeling geology with simple events. And again, these are combinatory, and so you can create essentially any model that you want and then put a topography on top of that, and then you have a link to that model that you can share on Twitter or on Facebook or on Reddit. And so it puts the tools in the hands of the students and not the professors, and I think that kind of flips the style of learning. That it allows the students to be the creators. And so I want to show a couple examples of how this is being used at UBC and around the world to teach about geology and geologic processes. So here we have some bedding planes cross-cut by a dike, and that's for you guys, so bedding, dike. And so we have cross-cutting relationships. And looking at these interactions, we want to be able to infer the relative geologic history and how these came to be. And so we know that the bedding came first, and then a dike came through because beds were originally connected. And so the students are given this picture and say, well, what is the history of this event? And obviously this is very complicated, so they're given a set of rules that they're given. They read those in a textbook and they try to apply them here. But it's much better to be able to be the creator and go through all of your different events, create things, see how they interact, see how if you change them, you create a different model, and see how the different geologies and events play together. And again, this is going in a forward direction versus an inverse direction, where you are given a model and you have to think backwards about how that got created. And another example is this. You guys see the white bedding in the background. It looks like a fold. Students think it's a fold, except if you give them the topography, and they can actually go in and see that it's actually not a fold. It's just the interaction of a plane with a topography. And so this sort of interactions are kind of cool to put in the hands of students, but not only students. You can, because it's online, people can go in and post on Reddit, and someone said, how did this mountain ridge form? Someone wrote a paragraph and posted a model, and it's a cool environment. that I kind of stumbled into. And so what have I learned? Why it didn't work the first time was not that it wasn't easy to use, it was easy to install and get started. And so that is like very important. It's open, you can share it, and it's engaging. You start with a spinning cube and some arrow that says start here. And so it's easy to start. I want to pull this back to what this means for online education and how this kind of fits in. I believe that these tools are part of the solution to our online education, and we've talked a lot about content creation, and I think that this is kind of thinking that online education is the same as traditional education, and I think there are huge differences that we haven't yet explored completely, and I think that the tools that we create can kind of enhance the online education, but they're also used in traditional education as well. So, my story, I saw this bimodal distribution in my education of people who just got it and those who were struggling to keep up, and I wanted to create tools that addressed bringing people up to speed, essentially, and providing a different set and a spectrum of different tools that allows that to happen. And so I've created a sandbox that hopefully cultivates intuition and is focused on process and discovery-based learning for the students. I think there is value in toys and value in play, and that these simple tools for engagement are key to the online learning environment that we're going into. Thank you.
Thank you. Colum.
So, again, this is something new for me. I apparently thought it was on Friday, so please ignore the date also. And I would also preface this with saying I don't have as many nice pictures as the previous presenters. Some of my slides are a little plain, some of them are summary, but we'll continue on. So who am I? I'm a fifth-year PhD student in medical genetics here at UBC. I did my undergrad in a small university in Ireland, so I think that does give me a little bit of a different perspective on open access and what that means. I'm also the Vice President, Academic and External Affairs at the Graduate Student Society here at UBC. So just very briefly, because it's 20 seconds, green open access relies on the authors, so that's students or faculty, to really want their literature or their publication to be open. And so an example is the institution-based circle here at UBC that you can submit your article to, versus Gold really relies on the journals. It relies on the journals to be open access and then for everybody to submit to them. And so you can have different versions of these going towards open access. So they're really routes towards open access. Gold is not the gold standard. I hear that a lot. It's not the gold standard. It just means it's a different route to open access. So I just wanted to give a brief background into the cereals crisis. So this was between 1986 and 2003. So as a grad student, those increases are insane. I'm always talking about trying to link things to CPI. They are way above the increases in CPI there that you see. And so you can see that open access is really needed in this day and age. So right now, what is access like? UBC, as a large institution, has relatively decent access. Smaller institutions, like my example here, Manitoba, only about 18,000 serial subscriptions. So it is a huge problem when you look across the developing world. And the main issue, I think Goldis alluded to this earlier, we as students, we pay taxes, well, we get rebates, I guess. But we end up paying taxes and fees that go into research. We do the research, and then we can't share it with our peers. Peers can't access it from across the globe because they're not subscribers or to that article. Also, another issue for grad students and faculty is actually the funds to publish in open access journals. So a number of universities like the University of Calgary, Ottawa, and even closer to home, Simon Fraser University, have funds that people can access to publish in open access journals. And we've had conversations about having that here too. What is the university's role in relation to open access? Well, what is the role of a university? To foster research for the betterment of society. That ultimately or education for the betterment of society is ultimately what the university is here for, and that's totally in line with open access. Also, the university should be pushing to change its policies towards open access. And I think Goldis alluded to the fact that they're working on an open access statement, but they're changing and modifying policies currently on the books to be more inclined with open access, is what I would say. So being in medical genetics, I'm a science student, so that has altered my perception of things. Everybody wants a cell paper where I'm from. A cell paper, a nature paper, they don't really care about open access. And this just speaks to the fact that we need a bit of a culture change. And ultimately, it'll be a forced culture change, if anything. How will open access affect journals themselves, impact factors? I can see open access actually having some trouble in the beginning for sure when it's implemented across Canada, if it's implemented across Canada. And so what will be the implications on different journals? The Tri-Councils just announced a couple of weeks ago, I think, that they're looking for feedback on their NSERC and CERC open access policy. So this policy will actually put them pretty much in line with CIHR. These are the main funders for graduate students. These are federal funding for graduate students. And so everybody should be getting involved there with submissions. So what students can and are doing, and I think this speaks volumes that there's 5 of us here today. We're having a conversation about things. So grad students, faculty need to sit down before they start a project and really talk about their publication, where they're going to, ultimately, are they going to go open access? That should be a topic of discussion for sure. I'm not going to go into too much detail as Goldis stole my thunder on the right to research. I know, I'm just joking. This is just an example of a student-led group that is really looking at to access to research is a student right. There's other innovative things from students across the globe. I think this is a UK example of open access button. It's a web-based tool that tracks the amount of, when people are denied access to a journal. So this is pretty innovative. It's only gotten off the ground recently, so this isn't actually their data. But it's a really cool way of tracking access to journals. As a graduate student society representative, the Graduate Student Society is part of the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations who are actively advocating for open access. And in doing so, we're actually going to be doing a submission. I have a conference call tomorrow, actually, to talk about our submission for this NSERC and SHERC proposal. And also, there's the GSS Open Scholar Award. That's open to all UBC graduate students. For non-thesis work submitted to Circle, there's a lottery and there's 4 awards given out every year. And this is in collaboration with the GSS and Circle. To summarize, I think ultimately what we want from this is for people to start having conversations, start actually having real discussions. So even if you go onto the internet and just Google open access, you're going to get a ton of information. Some of it you're going to disagree with. Go and have a conversation with somebody about that. And I did have that. I don't think we're ever going to see a VOOS or whatever you use to. No, I shouldn't say that. Whatever people use to illegally download music or movies. We're never going to see that for articles because they're going to go open access. So that's pretty much me. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Umang, and I'm a third-year student in international relations here at UBC. And I work as the Associate Vice President Academic at the AMS. And my job is to represent students on multiple issues relating to academics, mental health and well-being, and to make sure that their perspective is really communicated to the university and to our community. So I'd just like to start off by extending the definition of open access to include open access of learning materials at UBC. So this was a policy, a draft policy put by the Board of Governors earlier this year, and it includes the open shared use and revision of materials here at UBC. And professors and faculty are encouraged to share these materials through the Open Digital Depository Circle. And to talk more about the benefit of students, I think it's pretty obvious. It really facilitates collaboration and open exchange of ideas through this continual development and this learning process that's taking place. And it enhances the learning environment because these materials are catered to the current cohort of students. And going back to the more traditional sense of open access is a lot in synergy with UBC's place and promise, where the university has made a commitment for kind of convincing and going through with scholarly pursuits that promote understanding between students. And this includes unrestricted online access through scholarly journal, while of course maintaining individual property rights. So what does open access mean to students? Open access means the sharing of ideas. It means collaboration. It means communication with the academic community. It means it includes power to create. It includes in a global context, not just in the UBC community. It includes education, information, and being part of this new information revolution. So open access really provides students a holistic education. It makes a distinction between information that is currently available at a student's disposal versus that which is actually relevant to what a student is studying. And it provides an opportunity for accurate and a comprehensive learning process. So a very common undergraduate story is a student working on a research paper who needs access to an article, and he or she goes online, does a quick Google search, comes up and sees this abstract and says, oh, this is perfect for my paper. And you go in and it says access denied because the university doesn't have access to this. So open access solves this problem. It provides a larger number of resources for students, and this improves academic quality. So students have, it gives an environment for students to really engage in a higher quality of learning, and it improves their learning experience. Open access is not just helpful to students, it's definitely helpful to professors and other researchers because it gives them an opportunity to really engage in the latest research and have conversations with students, stay up to date. And moving forward, it really facilitates dialogue in lectures, and it helps students apply their learning of course material to a more practical, using a more practical approach. And it definitely empowers students to contribute to future research. So whether students are involved very directly in research or indirectly through being aware of the research that's going on, it's extremely instrumental in that process. And it really helps from that undergraduate to graduate transition that takes place with students. Open access is building upon what already exists. So it really it accelerates the discovery of new knowledge through building upon ideas, and it promotes awareness and collaboration within UBC and the global community. So an interesting conversation that came up with students was, why are you at UBC? So the AMS has an annual academic experience survey, and one of the questions that we asked students was, what is the primary reason for you attending UBC? And it was in the mountains and it was in the rain, but it was 36% of students said that their primary reason was to get engaged in research in some kind of way. And that's a pretty high number. And so then we extended the conversation to ask students, what does research mean to you? Does it mean sitting in a lab and mixing chemicals and doing some kind of research, coming up with thesis? Or does it mean being aware of what's going around you, of professors and their research, other graduate students, and things like that? And the opportunities that come about with open access are really huge. It navigates the modern research landscape, which basically means that with the greater digitalization of the world and the rising cost of subscription, like Colum mentioned, open access is extremely vital in today's world. And it provides students with not only resources inside of class, but outside of class, and it supplements their learning process. Open access is also very much in tune with flexible learning. Flexible learning focuses on developing, delivering, and evaluating learning experiences that promote effective and dramatic changes in student achievement. And open access does this through providing resources for students to really excel in their environment. So the role of the AMS. The AMS has always been a very strong advocate for open access, and the AMS also had a policy relating to open access, which is currently being revised to reflect the current needs of students and the UBC Senate's draft policy. The AMS is also very big on engaging students, having that conversation with students, getting students on board, letting them know what's going on and what do they think. It's providing effective spaces and forums for communication of these ideas. And not only with students, but the AMS hopes to engage with faculty and the administration and have a conversation about what's going on and discover areas of online collaboration and what resources can we provide so that this initiative really reaches its full potential. So that's pretty much it from the AMS, more of the undergraduate side on open access. In summary, to sum it all up, we believe that open access is great for undergraduate students, definitely for graduate students, and we see benefit, students see benefit, and we're definitely looking for collaboration and having those conversations.
Thank you.
Hello. So my talk will be on the fostering open access through the student publisher's point of view. And I speak from personal experience from my role as a publisher and also as editor-in-chief of the Nursing Student Journal. And this is our most recent edition that just came out a few months ago. So many of you will probably know Elsevier. They're commercial publishers who's known for high fees and bundling practices. But from my role as a publisher, I actually have a lot of respect for them, for what they have, how they started, and what they have achieved so far. So to give you a little perspective on what I mean, I'm just going to give you a bit of context. So we can let's all step back and try to look through the lens of the publisher and see what they're experiencing through their lives. And this is one of the activities that I do for the workshops. It's called an empathy map. So let's imagine everyone to see, let's imagine a fictitious character. So his name will be Bill. He's a graduate student, and he's going to start a publishing journal. And we're going to go through his daily lives of what he thinks, sees, says, and does, and what he hears on his everyday life as a publisher. And one thing that he thinks and feels is that he's overwhelmed and he's very stressed with everyday, like he's piled up work. Just to start a journal, like there's a website, how to start there's a lot of technical aspects and submission guidelines, policies, procedures that he has to write, and connecting with different people. So another thing that he feels is that he's very stressed because of the deadlines that he has to meet. There's a very time pressure and time-sensitive publication process. But the more he works with other people, there's always a delay in each step of the way. Like the publications, the internet, like the submissions that he has to have for the deadlines. But what he sees during the daytime is that he's in a lot of meetings. He's basically a salesperson trying to sell his ideas to a lot of meetings, faculty members, departments. Some are interested, some are not. Some are reading different newspapers in the meeting. But there's a lot of talks going on right now, but nothing really gets done. So at nighttime, what he does is he's sitting in front of a computer a lot. He's editing a lot of papers. He's formatting. A lot of the JPEG formats are very frustrating for him, just to put it into the articles. And some of the authors not following the guidelines. And he's spending most of his nights on top of his coursework. So he's really worried about how he's going to sustain this journal year in and year out, and who's going to do all the work. Because the bottom line at the end of the day is there's going to be a lot of work and time commitment involved with open access journals. Another thing that he's worried about is, because there's so much work involved, one thing he does to alleviate some of the work and the administrative task is he's partnering with a lot of different organizations. UBC Circle, so that's online. He submits to those depository. UBC College of Health Disciplines, so they'll help him with the administrative tasks. And some of the InspireNet and some of the faculties and departments in UBC. What he hears as a student publisher, there's a lot of requests from authors to delay the submission deadlines or to increasing the word limitations or decreasing the word limitations. And always, the most important, there's no money for that. Lastly, what is the way forward? So is boycotting Elsevier the way? I think that they're always doing it for their survival. If you don't give them a viable solution, they're always going to try to go against the flow of open access or open knowledge. But on the other hand, is open access journals, is that the solution? Well, there's a lot of, once the authors submit to open access journal, as the students previously mentioned, there's access fees. There's submission fees from anywhere from $500 to $5,000 just to publish one article. And the biggest impact will be on junior researchers or PhD students who need to publish a lot of articles. So the biggest argument for such high fees is that journals have all these high fees because of the peer review process. That's one of the biggest arguments. And to cut through that barrier is to opening up the peer review process to the researchers. So I have a vision that one day all the publishers and journals will have what's called author-guided open peer review process. What that means is that authors will submit to a digital repository, and their authors will connect and ask one of the researchers at arm's length to peer review their articles. And so it will be a win-win situation for everyone involved, because the reviewers, they will have their articles deposited in the Circle repository, and they can have their reviews assigned, is licensed, and DOI'd, which means that it will be like a regular original contribution, and it will be cited and referenced just like any other research articles. And there will be more incentives for reviewers to have a positive, good reviews. And another benefit for the authors would be to have it will benefit the authors, because then they'll be able to connect with different experts and the peer reviewers during the review process, because it will already be in the Circle digital repository. And so the end result will be a good revised version in the process. And it will also be good for the journals itself, because it will actually reduce the risk of accepting journals or articles that are flawed or based on limited reviews. So in the end, by creating an open review process, we can create a knowledge exchange that is fast, efficient, and most importantly, free. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. That was a fascinating discussion from all five of you. We now have some time for questions. I'd like to invite questions from the audience, and I'll bring the mic to you. Or you have floored them all. Who has a question? I'm sorry, Alan, I didn't see you with the mic.
Hi, I worked at a company that was the online publishing arm for a number of scholarly societies, and a lot of those scholarly societies had to protect the journal revenue, and so they came up with the notion of a 6-month or a year embargo period, and to protect that subscription. Not ideal, not perfect, but I wanted to get some of your thoughts on that as a model, because it certainly is a model that's out there that's not open access, but does allow the research to be available within 6 months to a year, depending on the publisher.
Hi, thank you for your question. So we did try to think of a business model that is different. You're mentioning that the question would be, one business model would be to ask the authors to delay the submission process for 6 months to a year, just before for the embargo date?
Slightly different. They publish the article, but they protect it so that the libraries, I'm a librarian, the libraries buy it and protect that subscription price. But after 6 months, it's completely free to the world. That article would be completely free to the world.
Yes, that is one of the solutions that we did, think about. But this is because this is a student journal, like there wasn't a lot of things that we could think about for the revenue perspective. So one thing we thought about was selling a published edition to the students. But I know that there are because this is a student-focused journal, there's a lot of budget limit constraints for the students. So I think having a business model of getting revenues from those from students wasn't really viable for the sustainable wise. So what we're planning to do is create having open access peer reviews, and so to reduce the workload of the publisher and have it online access. So that's what our plans.
I don't have so much a question as just a comment on that as well. And the opening speaker yesterday talked about PeerJ. And I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a mega journal. They publish, is it 31,000 articles this coming year? Huge. PLOS One is the big one. Sorry, PeerJ is the new one. But if you look at PLOS One, and PeerJ as examples of open access journals and their business models, I don't know whether it would work on a student level, but I was just wondering, I mean, could a student society like the GSS or the AMS maybe look into taking on something like this? It's a conversation to be had. Other questions? Actually, I have a question both for all of you. A number of you mentioned at various points having conversations, and I know that the AMS and the GSS have or will have open access policies. To what extent do you interact with faculty and with administration in terms of advocating for open access? What sort of possibilities do you have there?
Sure, I think we have some decent opportunities. I think any policy statements that we come up with will definitely get submitted to the administration, and it'll certainly open the dialogue a lot more. We haven't had a policy before in the GSS, and we're moving to more research-based advocacy over the next year. So we'll have a policy soon, and it'll definitely open the dialogue for sure.
I think the conversation with research supervisors is the one that's going to really make the difference in terms of numbers of articles that are published open access, and that's probably the most challenging one to have, because as a student, your research supervisor is everything to you. They determine how well you do, how far you go, and can create open lots of doors for you. And that conversation is very, very challenging. I've had it a couple of times with various people, and it's gone. No matter how well resourced a lab is, no matter how important open access is to someone, as a value system, it often comes down to the money to actually publish, to publish in an open access journal, which can be anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, $4,000 per article. And so I think part of it is we need to empower students to have those conversations, provide them with the tools and the physical funds to be able to allow them to bring that to the table and say, here, well, we've got the funds now. Why don't we publish in this highly rated journal? So those two things will be really important.
Did you want to add anything from the AMS?
Hi, this is also a question directed at all of you. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about the uptake amongst your peers when you talk to them about open access, if it's easy to convert them to the cause, as it were, and also is the the APC or article processing fees and charges, are those a real barrier to communicating the value of open access to students and making it seem relevant to them?
from my experience, it's not a terribly difficult sell when it's explained. When the process is explained, it's students are very, very much on board, and I find, like, particularly from a social justice point of view, especially when people in the community, patients, people in low and middle income countries who aren't getting access to this, and how it's in a lot of ways, impeding development in low and middle income, potentially impeding development in low and middle income countries. So it's really not a tough sell, but certainly I haven't had too many conversations with graduate students about this, where I think you could really sort of translate it into fruition, because most undergraduate students don't actually publish, but certainly amongst graduate students, I think the money to publish open access is a big issue, as well as the impact factor problem.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Great. Well, I'd like to thank our panel very much. That was a very, very interesting presentation from all of you. Thank you so much, and good luck with your advocacy efforts.